We're on skandha, on the third skandha, right? Perception. So, who wants to share a moment observed?
Well, I have two kind of contrasting moments.
Yeah.
I one evening before sunset, I was heading for a ultrasound test, and I pulled over to a paved trail to go for a walk. And I started the walk, and then I realized that this trail was parallel to a pretty major highway, and the traffic, especially the big trucks, but the sound was overwhelming, and I clearly did not like it. It was really intense, and at the same time, the sun was setting, and so it was this magical kind of the sun filtering through trees and covering some of the grass, and then there were shadows, and so that was really beautiful. It was really enchanting. So I had something I really liked, kind of simultaneously with something that was overwhelming to me, and in a way, I found that it didn't neutralize things, but it it kind of gave me. Um, so I didn't go fully into I really don't like this. Um, and then I think it was the next day or 2 days after I went for a walk on a trail in the woods near the Ashokan Reservoir, which is this incredible body of water. And I took a flute with me, and whenever the woods would open up, there would be this amazing view of the mountains in their kind of soft autumn colors, and a real dazzling reflection of sun on the water. It was just spectacular, and I really experienced. For me, it was a sense of awe. I just clearly it was almost beyond liking or disliking. um,
Did you did you write? Did you like kind of notice each element of the form?
I didn't in the moment. I was just actually what I ended up doing was which is not really what we're talking about, but that was the reason I brought the flute. And so instead of writing, I fluted in response to the experience I was having.
Hmm.
Um, and and sort of the icing on the cake for that experience was way off in the distance. A couple I didn't realize had been listening, and the man called out, "Thank you, with gratitude." And so it was the
Hmm.
contrast of those two walks was amazing.
This week, when you go on to the next one, really try to start out by paying attention to the form. Uh, I think I think when we do that, it's it's very hard ordinarily. This is why this is a lifetime practice to perceive the emptiness of the five conditions. Uh, as we get to 2, 3, 4, 5, perceiving the emptiness is even harder. And it's a little easier with form, as hard as that is. Uh, but when we do when we when we become aware that our sensory experience is, what our sense organs, brain, including brain, are doing. Uh, when we come to sensation, is this positive or negative or neutral? It's a little easier for us to see that it's something we're adding to the situation.
Can can I, in following what you just said, there was another day where we we went into a nearby city and um, we stopped for lunch at a new little tiny restaurant and had what they call these little soup dumplings, which I've never had before, and it was just three little dumplings in a container. That was the whole thing. They were so good. and, um, and then, but the point of this is, then we went walking, and we walked into I guess it's like a gift store from things from all over the world. And I really respond to fragrances, and it was filled with the most amazing, spicy fragrances. And I found myself creating this whole story of the coziness and the comfort of that whole thing that was just set up by my encountering these fragrances. But it was my story. It was my own interpretation or my own response. And as soon as we stepped out, the fragrance was gone and the story was gone.
I want to come back. We'll come back to the dumplings in a second. Damon has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, actually, I wanted to stay with the dumplings because I like dumplings too. And so, you say, David says, okay, they were good. And the only way I can really force my, perception of the emptiness of the perception is by, intellectually reminding myself that as good as they are, they're still just made up of, fire, air, water, and whatever. And they're just atoms. And any goodness, there's no inherent goodness in them. And so, the whole thing is a projection, a magic show. And that's okay. But that to me is my way of, keeping emptiness in the forefront.
Yeah, this working with the skandhas is an alternative route to where you're pointing, Damon.
How so?
That you're coming at it from knowledge about the object. The skandhas is a training which brings you to that point, maybe the same point. If we get to the ultimate point, we get to the same point. But it takes us there by looking at the constituents not as object, but as subject.
I
So
see.
when you see, you know, the sound, smell, taste, touch, thought arising in the dumpling experience, uh, it's easier, maybe, to realize that, the emptiness of they are good uh, is that good is something I'm adding, just like salty.
I just said that, didn't I?
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's
but yeah.
coming at it from the subjective rather than from knowledge about the objective.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And, you know, uh, uh, in the world of the Buddha, it's Avalokiteshvara's way is, is this practice of being aware of the emptiness of the skandhas. Uh,
I see. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, thank you for that.
If I,
You know, it's a hard practice. You know, this is I've mentioned this before, but if we were to ever offer this course again, we wouldn't call it the skandhas or whatever it was called this time. We'd call it Introduction to Skandha Practice. That we're all just beginners in this work. And you know, Avalokiteshvara is an aspiration, you know, because we all fall back, you know, because at least in some circumstances, we're all going to add the statement after whatever we do with our skandha practice. But we're going to add a statement which goes is something like, "But this really is good," you know. So you know, all our emptiness falls away, and you know we think we think we got the external thing.
is it in what you're saying, Ken? What strikes me is this way of approaching, as you're describing, gives each of us the full responsibility for that experience of emptiness or whatever we do with it, whatever we, you know, and so it's not anything out in the world, the objects or any, it really is taking full responsibility for creating the whole story in a way. And what we do with it, I guess, is even more so.
Yeah, you know, I think there are alternative paths. You know, and Bernie says this all the time. It's, you know, it's like a big Zen thing. You know, uh, it's just when you try to follow more than one path at the same time, you can get confused. I was just reading something last night about Hakuin, great Japanese Zen reformer. I think lived in the 1700s or something like that. This is Zen has such a long history uh, that it's very weird to Americans. You know, this is like Hakuin was reinventing Zen before the American Revolution. Uh, you know, but he was a Zen teacher. He also was kind of fond of Pure Land Buddhism. Uh, you know, which is you do this chanting, repetitive chanting over and over again, you get to the same place. Uh, uh, and he was basically saying, you know, these are two beautiful paths. This is not an argument for hybrid. Uh, you know, and Bernie was always very, very engaged with interfaith. What he changed? They changed it. Started to talk about multi-faith rather than interfaith because when he talked about interfaith, people thought he was talking about a mixture. You know, he's not. There are different ways, and I'm thinking of this because there are traditions in Buddhism and Christianity and Judaism and probably every religion, which is kind of a philosophical pathway to enlightenment. Uh, you know, and you get you apparently can get to the same place. Uh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Uh, this is not for the my experience. I just in regard to what you were mentioning, that the repetition of the same syllable of the word, we call it the mantra. So Bij mantra or the mantra. So chanting that, what I have found is that there is a set of words that I keep on repeating. I just tried it. I was just recently trying it. So what I find is that I'm driving through Kolkata traffic, which is absolutely, totally chaotic. You never know what is coming at you. And quite sometimes it so happens that I get disturbed by suddenly somebody popping up, or at times just because of the jam in front of the traffic in front, and so on and so forth. But if I'm chanting this, it's I have analyzed it, and it feels like it takes away some of that nervous energy, whatever it is. It's such a free road, wow, how is it looking, that excess energy, or oh my god, this is so draining, whichever way it is, it takes off that excess energy and kind of pulls it down to that litany of repeating the same thing, and leaves the brain, leaves me free to act of itself in a much freer way. That was my personal feeling and analysis. I'll tell
Yes.
my experiences later.
I'll get you 1 second, Joe. I'll just tell you a story, a little quick. Bernie was very close with Krishna Das, who's a kirtan master. And I don't remember what the event was at Montague, but Krishna Das did a talk about his practice. And it, the parallels, that he could have been talking about Zazen. He's a master. And he talks about this chanting practice, which there's like a line that repeats some number, like maybe 14 times, and then it goes to the next line or something like that. And, he's leading the chanting. He's got to keep track of the number of repetitions. He could have been talking about me sitting on my cushion, counting my breath. And sometimes he would lose count. And his mind would go to something else. And he had a wonderful take on this. That he said, those were the gift moments, actually. That your conditioning, as he saw it, was like constructed of all these repetitions in your life, the kind of like they're like threads. And each time your conditioning takes you away, and you gently come back to your breath, it's like you're cutting one of the threads that are tying you to this conditioning. And that changed my whole attitude toward counting my breath. And I stopped being jealous of the people who told me their mind never wanders. I said, oh, that's too bad. You're doing all this meditation and your conditioning isn't being weakened at all. It's just.
Beautiful. Lovely interpretation.
Joe?
Yes, hi, Ken. I'm wondering different things, but I don't know if this is going to take hold, this skandha practice. I'll find out as I do it if it's going to become a part of my life. But I know with Zen that I have this practice where I sit down solitary and meditate, but there are people around me to support me. I think you said that, is it right that somebody should be reading this and and like giving me feedback? Who would
No,
that person be?
no, I didn't,
No,
I didn't say that.
it's
So
a
I'll
solitary.
tell you the backstory on this.
Okay.
Uh, when I did these classes with Jishu, she had us, at the end of we spent a month on each precept of each skandha. I think it was a month, and we would hand in at the end of the skandha month our whatever it was, 30 reflections or something. We never got any feedback. I don't know that she read them. That I look back on it now, and I think asking people to submit them was kind of a tool. Bernie would call them an upaya, a skillful means for helping people actually do the work themselves. But there's no feedback.
So how do I know that I'm doing it right?
That's a koan. The and it's probably close to the sensation skandha, closer to sensation and perception. Good, bad, neutral, right, wrong, neutral. The delusion, meaning not seeing the emptiness, is thinking right is out there, like it's a good dumpling. Rather than I just had a good experience with this dumpling. It's not me, it's a good dumpling.
Hmm.
I have a separate question. Sorry to ask so much. How do I ask this? I like to go to the Met a lot in Manhattan to look at paintings. And it's a very big museum, you know? And I find myself wandering. I only go on my own, and I don't know what I'm going to end up looking at and what it's going to do to me. And it's all visual. And I enjoy it very much. And I'm always kind of curious what's going to happen when I look at this next painting. If I stare at it for a while, the longer I stare, the more likely something may occur for me. And I'm not bored, you know? With the skanda thing so far, I do notice there's a little bit of boredom occurring because I don't have anything to look at outside of me, you know?
So that's the
Um,
fact that
is the boredom a good thing or am I judging it,
you're rushing ahead too far. You gotta walk before you can run. You have to, I mean, because this is an introduction rather than getting it, next week you'll add the label. You can call it bored. This is we'll slide right into what the introduction is for next week, then we'll come back to this one because you led right into it. But you're doing this journaling practice with a moment in your life, and you've gotten through the form, the sensation, and the perception. Now you're going to attach a label to it. Some of you are starting to do this already. I think the prompt is, what's the title for this reflection?
Okay.
And maybe you call it boredom. That's your label. But you gotta do the work with the first three skandhas. Otherwise you're wasting your time. You gotta notice what your body, what the body sensation is. You gotta notice what you're smelling, what you're seeing. That gets labeled boredom. I think it's possible you're going to find out you haven't seen anything. I do a lot of walking too. I like trails. Looking forward to next week. We're going to be up in Massachusetts, and you Google walking trails near me, and you get a rail trail, which I love. An old railroad line that's been made into a trail. If you're not doing the practice, if you're not paying attention, you end up walking on the same trail every day. If you do the practice, you're walking on a different trail every day. It's never the same as it was the day before. It's never the same as it's ever been.
Even if I'm doing the skandha practice in my living room all the time, it's never the same if I'm really doing it.
Yeah.
Because that's where I find myself a lot, doing it in the living room.
Well, get out. You're learning. This is learning. I think it's easier to learn to observe by putting yourself in different situations than by putting yourself in the same situation. Noticing, you want to learn to paint different things for a while. Monet didn't start out being Monet. He didn't start out by painting the same haystack over and over again. He had to get
Could I?
Yeah.
Sorry. Could I put in on this note itself, like three experiences in particular, 3 days? Could I just read out whatever I've got written there?
Yep.
Okay. Fine. I'll start in with one I had on the 26th. So I was, I'll just go in with it and leave you to kind of formulate it. So I was in the form, I was getting it down to the 5 elements. So I wrote them as Prithvi, Vayu, Jal, Agni, Akash. That's ground, air, water, fire, and space. So in the Prithvi or the ground, 4-5 people in a room, a harmonium, somebody at the table. That was the Prithvi part. The Vayu was sounds, talk, voices. The Jal part was nothing in particular. Same for the fire part. And the space part was cramped. When I interpreted that as the sensations, for the eyes and the ear, it was mainly the harmonium, somebody, and the sounds or the words. Nothing different. As for the nose, tongue, and the skin, I did not notice anything in particular. The mind, there was an anticipation. And in retrospect, that seemed like a slight resistance. I would put it as slightly negative, slightly apprehensive. The perception was related to this mind, a slight rebound, overall internally a cringing experience. My interpretation later, I know this always happens to me before I open out and immerse into an experience. So this is kind of a reaction, automatic reaction to not knowing what was coming.
Mhm.
So this was on the 26th. Should I go on to another?
Yes, do one more. We'll see.
Okay. Okay.
Where-
Yeah. So this was on the 29th. This was kind of the trail experience, the counterpart in here. Just open my eyes. Saw I have no words for it, a wonderful iridescent saffron color in the sky. The form was soothing irradiance. I have no way but to label it because there is no way I can, no other words I can use. It was totally positive. Space, it filled the whole space around me. The water part of it, it was clouded. It was heavy, but no water drops. The ground part of it, there was solidity beneath my feet, cool. Sound part of it, there were random rings, or I should actually say horns or rings, nothing else. And color-wise, there were bright colors, red, blue, orange, indigo. It was a 2/3 of a wonderful rainbow. Now I'm classifying it as wonderful. I tried not to do it then. Sound, smell, taste, I had no attention on that. Mind, awe, wonder, totally attractive, and yet totally appreciative of its utterly temporary nature. No holding on, merely enjoying. So it is my experience. Enjoying it to the full, as long as it lasts. It is momentary.
I have a couple of thoughts coming up. One is that you're using, to look at form, you're using a somewhat different conceptual scheme, right?
The 5 elements?
Yeah. Instead, that's a different conceptual scheme a little bit than the six senses, right?
Oh, yeah, the six senses I'm using for the sensations.
So six senses are the form.
No, I'm using them separately. I'm telling them form. I'm telling the earth, water, air, fire, and space. That is my form. And for the sensations, I'm using eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind for the sensations. And apart from them, the perception, as you said. I'm trying to label all of that.
Yes. So
Some of it is overlapping, so there's a mix at times.
so I have a general reflection. And there's nothing as I understand this stuff. None of these teachings, like come from God. They're all human devices for helping us deepen. So there's no argument that one tool is better than another. There's it's been a very positive experience in my life to work with these sense organ experiences as form, as the basic concepts of experience. And from my experience, I would get nervous starting with a conceptual scheme, which I'm afraid would take me away from noticing the basic ingredients of my experience. So that's why I think that this form, and why it's like the cornerstone of the Heart Sutra. And it's like a big, I mean, it's the only skandha, which the Heart Sutra dives into in detail. Uh, the rest is also, the rest of the other four get summary, sensation, perception, reaction, and consciousness are also like this. That's it. Form gets you dive into. It's to me, it's a valuable teaching, but it's not the only tool. Yeah.
I have a question here. That is, actually, I got confused, which is why I went on into that form. I had started off with what was the sensations thing. So sense organs for the form, but then sensations, what would be different there?
Sensation is good.
Just that part of it.
Positive, negative, neutral.
Okay, fine.
Perception is hanging on
the attractive,
rejecting.
Attractive, repulsive. Yeah. Okay.
Get it. And to me, like the sensation perception thing was like understanding, in my body, the distinction was like a big koan kind of learning thing for me, because when I first started working with them, I thought sensation and perception were kind of a redundancy. And getting to notice and realize that there were things that I experienced as negative that I was still hanging on to and clinging to, that was
Yeah.
major.
Yeah.
Who wants to go next?
Yeah.
Damon?
Yeah. So when I wake up in the morning, I usually look at the New York Times because, although I live in Washington now, I was born and raised in New York, spent 40 years there. And so I read the Times, and I'm reading this article today about this company called Palantir or something. It's like the hottest stock, along with the AI stocks. And I don't know anything about it, so I started to read a little bit. They're interviewing this CEO of technology, and it's all about like massive systems, armies, surveillance infrastructure, integrating data, talking about terms like the kill chain. And I was just like, my jaw was just dropping because I was just contrasting it with what we're doing here in class, like one is just outward power, and what we're doing is a kind of inward freedom. And I'm like, what is this crazy world? This guy is such a hero. This company is the hottest stock. It's so antithetical to our Buddhist sensibilities, or am I missing something?
Uh, my guess is that it probably feels that way to most of us. And yes, we're probably missing something too,
Hmm.
there's, uh, uh, it's always more complicated than we think it is.
But we're Zen peacemakers, right? So this is like key here, right?
Yes.
How do we speak? How do we speak out about this phenomena of, uh, more data will guarantee us safety and freedom. More data, more data, more data, outward data.
Uh, I mean, heavily emphasizing, this is just my opinion, man. Uh, the answer in one level, my answer on one level is simple. Talk to this guy. Uh, it,
That's what happened. This is an interview between Ross Doha, I think his name is, a conservative columnist, invites this guy on, spends, hour or two with him. It's all transcribed. Yeah, they were talking to him all right.
but see, the peacemaker needs to get into the conversation.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Uh, and if we don't have access to him, uh, find some people, probably not in the Zendo, uh, who think this guy is the cat's meow. Talk to them.
All right, I got this friend from childhood. What a sweet guy, but his thing is, for all these years, he's been listening to this guy named Jim Cramer or somebody, this investment guru, and it's prime time. Everybody but me have watched it, and so I just yeah, he's calling that this is the hottest stock now, and we should all invest. And to me, it's like, yeah, oh wow, you invest. This is completely violating the precepts to invest in a company like this.
Talk to him.
Okay.
And try to, so the peacemaker conversation is, in sort of Bernie's metaphor, is you got to both be inside the circle. Not to talk to him as an outsider. You're unenlightened, non-peacemaker person. Let me enlighten you. Here we are, friends since childhood, and we see things so differently. Can we understand what experiences we had that have brought us to see these different sides of the elephant, you know?
Yeah, well, let me just jump in and say that they asked this guy something of his question about what's the morality behind your company, what's the agenda, and he said, because no one wants to think of themselves as a son of a bitch. Everybody wants to think they have the best motivations, right? So they asked this guy, and he said, he glossed over it by saying, "Look, the West is a good thing for the world, and that's our agenda here. Make our armies fight smarter, make our whole Western hegemony. This has been shown to be a good thing since Greek civilization."
Can I ask a question related, I think, to this? Or maybe it's an observation. My tendency is to see where we can find a place together in the circle that maybe isn't directly related to that topic, but is something we both can connect with.
We both love our families.
And maybe that's a place to begin.
Sounds
And
good.
you know,
Right. Like say, hey, look, I'm concerned about safety too. All these mass shootings and wars going on. Yeah, I want the world to be safe, and you do too. That might be the opening line.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just say from the Dhammapada, you can't fight hate with hate.
Yeah. This is maybe tangential to the skandhas.
I know, but I'm skandhaing about this whole situation.
The skandha practice, I think in Bernie's lingo, gets you to not knowing. And for Bernie, that's always first. You got to get to the not knowing before you can't just jump, say, to loving action. You can't get to loving action from a place of knowing.
Okay.
And this going through bearing witness, you have to, when you come from not knowing, you see what is arising in you, what's coming up for you, and you say it out loud. That's the bearing witness. What happens next? How does healing arise? You can't jump to that.
Okay. I mean, the first precept, non-harming. It's like, what's not knowing about that, right? I call them as I see it, right? It's just my opinion, man. But hey, what's not to know about non-harming?
Everything.
Could I pipe in once?
Mm-hmm.
although I'm totally new to this concept of not knowing, but still, two words, that is this big data, AI, this aspect, although we do foresee it as creating a lot of havoc, and yet on the other side, it has led us to lots of miracles in healthcare, in mental wellness also, in sort of easing out the work of several workers with very repetitive tasks where safety becomes an issue. So it has helped in those aspects also. Maybe that is where the not knowing is all about.
Thank you.
It is perhaps not right to merely look at it just like if you say science, if you say it's a boon or a bane,
You
you
can't,
can jump to one side.
wait. In order to get to the not knowing, how do you get to the not knowing? One answer on how do you get to not knowing is the Heart Sutra.
Mhm.
That you get to not knowing as you practice on this path to perceiving the emptiness of all five conditions. That's a way to work toward not knowing. And we will probably never completely get there, those of us who are in Avalokiteshvara. Bernie's joke, is maybe the Dalai Lama gets there, but of course he's an incarnation of Avalokiteshvara, so he has a leg up on the rest of us.
Hmm.
Can I, I want to, forgive me, go back, Joseph, to something you said about going to the museum.
Hmm.
The more I listen, it's like the Skandha studies is going, you are the museum. You or I am the museum. I am the painting. And so it's a real exploration of these details of being alive, and yeah, and
From this, when you look at it in terms of the skandha, what you're focusing on is not the painting as an external object. You're becoming aware of your seeing. I go to the Met often too. Sometimes I see the paintings. Sometimes I'm fascinated by the people who aren't looking at the paintings directly. They're only looking at them through their phone. And they're taking pictures. They're looking at pictures of the painting. And then they move on to the next to get another picture. And why are you coming to the museum? This is my brain part. This is my brain. Why are you coming to the museum? The pictures of the paintings are all online already. What are you coming here for? My experience, when you pay attention to what I'm seeing in the museum, I'm aware that I'm not just seeing the painting. I'm aware of the person who wants to get a closer look and walks into my field of vision to get closer to the painting. That's part of what I'm seeing.
Can I chime in? I'm just listening to you, Damon, and I don't know if I'm hearing accurately something similar that I experience. I waste too much water, in my opinion. And I rationalize, oh, well, I have chronic pain, so the universe is okay with me doing that. But I don't, I'm conflicted with it. You know, I don't know if what you're going through is conflict, but I'll say that as long as I use my conscious mind to resolve this, I'll probably have a much tighter knot. You know, myself will be more knotted. And maybe that's what the self is, a big knot, whatever. And you know, when I go to the Met, I guess I do something different. I'm not sitting there engaging with my knot. And maybe that's what the skanda practice is, similar to the paintings,
But
is that it'll come to me some other way. I don't know. Yeah.
so, there's a temptation to short circuit the practice. And if
Uh,
you're not doing the skanda practice, hoping that you can get to the end point. As far as I understand the teaching, it's a pathway. It's not, it's not an end point. And if you don't walk the walk, you're not walking the walk. Uh, Perceiving the, getting in touch directly with your sensory experience, with the form of your experience, is the key point to the beginning of the practice. Leaping ahead and trying to draw conclusions about it is not this practice. It's something else. It's some sort of theoretical activity as far as, from the point of view, the Heart Sutra. Uh, and it's okay to use a moment of theoretical practice as a moment to notice. So here's a moment. We got the story. What Damon gave us was sort of the end point of the skandhas. He's sort of backing up, but we don't have the beginning point. So at the end point, we got the story. We're going to get to that in a couple of weeks. The story about reading the newspaper and coming on this guy and not knowing what to do about him and all this stuff. And it has a label. That's the reaction. Story is the consciousness. The reaction is something like, I'm putting words here because it's not exactly what Damon said, but AI is a threat to everything we value or something like that.
So at this stage, we're just looking in the first three skandhas, this kind of vague, amorphous. There are these sensations in the body, and then there's there's this
Hello.
huh?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah, and then there's this feeling stage where it's kind of like I like it, it's pleasant, it's unpleasant, and even in perception, it's still amorphous, right? It's like the judging kicks in, you know.
So
Well,
I would call it the opposite of amorphous.
okay.
Amorphous, I think, literally means no form, right? Uh, and we're starting with exactly the form. What is it? What are the we're going to put a label on something. What is it that we're labeling? And the practice shows us, if we do it, at least points us to what we're labeling is our experience. Not that it's very hard. You got to do the practice to get that. Otherwise, you think is what what you believe
Intellectual.
you're seeing is what you're thinking. You think you're seeing this threat, That's not what you're seeing. What are you seeing? What's, what's there? Uh, uh, and your brain is a big part of this sensorium here. If you're reading, because there's content that's coming in. And part, you shared that, like the brain thing was, this is the hottest stock. Uh, what else were you experiencing sitting at the breakfast table?
Oh,
Uh,
well, there's burnt toast, there's my wife's face, there's my cold feet on the floor. Yeah, there's a gazillion other things going on, sure.
so we want to pay attention to what that experience is. What's that moment? Uh, and you may down the road, label this a moment of fear, uh, depending on, what some of your bodily sensations are. Uh,
Right,
because usually there are some body sensations which are important in a moment that we want to label fear.
right.
We're not always noticing them. Uh,
Sure. I mean, there's the gripping in the chest, there's the palpitations, there's the, the head heavy. I mean, yeah.
yeah. Maybe there's another thought. Maybe, is this really what I'm reading, or do I have too much coffee? Uh, that's one of my thoughts, although I don't read the news anymore. Uh,
Okay, so there's causes and conditions, a myriad of causes and conditions that are arising. It's too much and too fast to really keep track of everything.
right. But what we to practice is to pay attention to what's arising.
Okay.
Practice, not that you can do it all the time, any more than you can be mindful every second. But you do certain practices like we do Zazen, not just so that we have 30 minutes a day of peace on our cushion. That's not the reason for doing Zazen. You know, we're doing it. I mean, we calm down a little bit in our life without doing Zazen every minute. That we begin to be aware. This is my experience. Bernie kept punctuating, with "it's just my opinion, man." That was his way of expressing. This is my experience. When you're aware that it's your experience, in the words of the Heart Sutra, you're perceiving the emptiness of all five conditions.
Mm. Hmm.
And when you do that, where's the pain?
Mm. As in, there's no pain, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Which,
there's ultimately there's no pain, but conventionally it's a pain in the ass, That's just my opinion.
well, we're at the beginning of the practice. The promise of the Heart Sutra is that if you do the practice, you'll experience less pain. Uh, can anybody prove that to you? No, you can only prove it to yourself or not doing the practice. Archie?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, so that which I mentioned as my recognition that it was I was being apprehensive. So that apprehensive is the label, isn't it?
What's a label? I'm sorry.
Apprehensive, anxiety, apprehension. Am I
not quite-
audible?
I'm not quite getting it. Somebody else help me?
Anxiety. Hello?
Hello? I'm just not understanding the word. Is somebody else getting it?
Yeah. Anxiety. Anxious.
Anxious.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay.
Yeah. Huh. So is that the label?
Yes.
Okay. Fine.
It doesn't mean that anxiety doesn't exist. It just means that your experience is your experience.
Yeah.
Anxiety is a good one. Somebody shared with me this recently, this distinction that your anxiety is a label that we're putting on, and what I've been told, never having been a world-class athlete myself, is that some of these things that I label as anxiety, world-class athletes label as excitement.
Yeah. They are actually, even I've been told they are very similar. A little stress is very useful for performance.
Yes.
No stress or boredom is bad for performance.
And we change the world when instead of saying, I'm so anxious about this upcoming performance, if we say, I'm so excited about this upcoming performance.
Isn't it, is it, is it worthwhile, is part of this practice to, uh, to ask myself, well, why am I arriving? What is happening within me that I'm arriving at this label? You know, that someone would say, oh, it's exciting. Someone would say I'm anxious. Well, what am I feeling? What am I going through? What am I thinking that I
It's a,
arrive?
it's a new moment. And it's worth looking at this moment of reflection. Uh, and it's all there again, probably. Somebody points out, like I point out to you, let's say, that what you're labeling as anxieties, other people might label as excitement. And how do you react to that news? Are you excited by it, or does it make you anxious? Kind of, what's the experience? What's that experience? Am I being freed from anxiety, or am I being criticized for my anxiety?
Absolutely the first one. Yeah.
We got a few more minutes. People who haven't jumped in, share.
I was just wondering with form, the sixth one is the mind.
Wait, we got about 15 minutes left. I want to give people a chance to share their observations of a moment before we run out of time, if they want to.
Sure, I would like to share it. Actually, I just realized that because of time change, I missed the scheduled time because we had time change the previous weekend. So I thought I was joining at noon your time, and it's already past 1.
Yeah, we will change for next week. We'll be on standard time next Thursday.
Okay, but I will still need to consult this
Yes.
time zone wizard and watch whatever happened when I missed it. So
Yes.
my moment was lying in my bed in the morning. Sight, it was white ceiling, dark blue curtain, round white object on the ceiling. I heard sounds of a trash collecting truck and my own breath. Smell, it was warm, slightly steamy air. The taste was bland. I felt weight and warmth of the duvet over my body and right palm touching the back of my head. And my brain was thinking of how I wasted the previous day and how much workload I will have today. It was unpleasant and attracting. I was moved to get out of bed and continue my work.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else didn't get to share a moment who would like to? Well, let me just reiterate. People came, at least for sure, Adam, I think, missed the brief introduction to the fourth skandha. So let me repeat that a little bit, and then maybe there'll be time for Joe's thought question. So the fourth skandha in the Heart Sutra, it's called reaction. Bernie's prompt is, it's the label. My twist for today on the prompt is that when you write down the form and sensation and perception, and many of you have been doing this without recognizing it as the fourth skandha, you've been telling us this is what this moment is before you start. That's probably the title. Whether you call it anxiety or the first cup of coffee or whatever it is you call it, that's the label that you put on the moment. It's a way of it's probably where most of us live most of the time. Most of us, most of the time, aren't paying attention to the first three skandhas. And when we live in the world of labels, we think we're seeing what we think. Not what's right in front of us. My metaphor for this, when we live in our world of labels, we paint pictures of the Madonna and Child, where Mary has this little small adult standing in her lap. Because I'm thinking that babies are small adults. Somehow I never managed to actually see a baby. I just saw my idea of a baby.
What does the baby look like without your idea of the small adult? I don't get it.
So my favorite exercise for seeing comes out of drawing on the right side of the brain, which has this wonderful training exercise. Suggests that you draw, what you might think was going to be a task to draw a chair, but the instruction is to draw the space around the chair. And when you do that exercise, you are likely to find out what you were actually seeing rather than your thought of a chair. Otherwise, we draw the symbol, a mental symbol, rather than what we're seeing.
Yeah, and what about the baby? Could you just say, since you used the specific example of the Madonna with the little adult, so if you take away your label of the a little adult, what might you be seeing instead? Just a baby?
No, I think you see a small adult. Uh, you know, I mean, you walk down the hall to the next room at the Met, and nobody thinks that Jesus was a small man when he was an infant.
I see.
Would a beginning say, I notice that when I'm out walking and I come upon a baby, one of the first things I notice is the clarity of skin and the beautiful kind of, often these kind of puffy, rosy cheeks, and the sounds and the movement of the baby. It doesn't sound or look to me like an adult at all. and and so it's, I mean, for me, the whole notion of that painting a young man or a young adult is absolute belief. It's ideas. It's the whole concept, as opposed to really meeting and encountering this little creature.
Well, if you strip away all the labeling, I'm looking at the Madonna picture now. All I'm seeing is patterns and light. I mean, it really doesn't make any sense besides that. Shapes, patterns, light, photons hitting my eyes. I mean,
Well, you're not seeing photons hitting your eyes.
no, I'm not. But I am seeing these forms, like I said, light, patterns, shapes. I don't know that that's a nose, it's just a dark spot on the more shadowy, seems to have some depth on the picture.
Mm-hmm.
That that's a painting. That's not the baby. No.
Not even
Maybe
a paint. It's not even a painting. It's a composite of a canvas and some oil. I mean,
that's a painting.
Well, that's an analysis.
Yeah.
I have a very basic question regarding the time. So, do you move ahead in time or behind in time? Who will guide me to that? Like 9:30 p.m. my time, it starts till
You're
this
gonna-
week.
uh,
So next week, should I look for 8:30 or should I look for 10:30?
We go backwards 1 hour.
You go backwards. Okay. So what is 8 now will be 7 then?
I'm looking for Jeff to answer this question.
Yeah. I can't count past 10 unless I take my shoes off. So
No. Okay. So noon now will be 1 p.m. Then or 11 a.m. then?
Uh, uh, Here
Noon.
I'm in Colorado, USA. So
It's going to be
it's
noon.
11:30
Eastern time.
now. So as of Monday, it will be 10:30.
So here's my solution.
Okay. So 11:30 will
This
become
is close
10:30.
to
Okay.
the
Good.
this is close to the AI nightmare. That I don't know anymore. I look at my phone. Uh, if you look at the world clock on your phone next week and you look for noon Eastern time, you'll see where you are in relationship.
Yeah.
When
I'll just go forward 1 hour. Okay. So
Yeah, that sounds
it'll be
accurate.
8:30 my time.
my
Yeah.
school from my childhood, I remember spring forward, fall back.
Right.
So Sunday we're going to get an extra hour of sleep.
Yes.
Okay.
Quick question, Ken. Very quick. The difference between the fourth skandha and mind, which is the sixth form,
Brain,
is one inside the other?
mind, not mind, brain.
Brain. What's the difference?
Brain is what is like, what thought is coming up in the moment. Label is the name you put on the experience. So in Damon's example, he might have said, his thought might have been, this guy's a jerk. Or this guy's dangerous, or whatever the thought was. And then the label might be something, whatever label he puts on the experience. Could be similar to the thought, it could be different to the thought.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also I would like to take away from this that whatever we're doing in our skandha practice and the way our individual, aggregates are working, it's being played out institutionally out there in the world. Countries, nations, policies, they're all making the same mistakes. They're all not practicing the skandhas, and that's why they're coming to the conclusions that they are. And it's sad, and we're Zen peacemakers.
Yes. And so Bernie would ask, what's the upaya? What's the skillful means for reducing harm?
Bake bread and give it to the homeless. I mean, what do I know? It's just my opinion.
And that the practice is to take us away from to help us find a different way than you're wrong and I'm right. So I think what we're sensing when we come to this practice is that when we do you're wrong, I'm right, things don't actually get better.
Right.
And that's not as much of an answer as we would like.
Yeah.
We keep wanting to scream at Bernie, but just tell me what to do. Tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Well, eventually, I mean, he acted. Like I said, I don't know anything about it except a bakery in Yonkers and giving it away, and that was it.
Well, there was also, we should create the Zen peacemakers.
And
there was this moment in his life when he decided with Jishu that there were other things they needed to do besides build the Greyston mandala.
Mhm.
And making that shift upset a lot of people, including me. You know,
and wouldn't, I mean, another step is what Claude Thomas did years ago when he walked across. He was a student of Bernie's, and he walked across the country to talk with people, to meet with people, to see what they were thinking, what they were feeling, and there are all sorts of different paths to take in this, depending on who, depending, I don't know.
uh, yes. And it's years now. So you step back and you look, and I think there was some skill in Claude's choice of upaya. And that it was that in the act of walking across the United States, I think maybe some people engaged with him because he was walking across the United States who wouldn't have engaged with him otherwise. But is that better than Damon picking up the phone and calling this high school friend or childhood friend,
In the immediate moment, why is it any different? I mean, it's better or not. It's stepping into talking with someone.
Well, in any particular moment, uh, for Claude, why? I mean, it's his moment. He would have to look at it, uh, and bear witness to it if he wanted to. But it's like, why did he decide to walk across the country instead of picking up the phone and calling his mother? Or picking up the phone and calling somebody he had served with in Vietnam who he hadn't spoken to in years? He just maybe one felt, one was in his mind positive, the other maybe less positive, he always wanted to walk across the, I don't know.
And this is kind of, for me, when I met him and when I learned what he was doing, it was the first step in developing upaya, that he went on to do incredible work with gangs and groups around the world, where that initial skill of just walking and meeting people, he cultivated upaya to a point where he could then be doing this other work.
Okay, that's a story. We aren't getting to the story yet.
Um,
Story is
okay.
kind of this. We're a
You
couple
said you said you objected to a certain turn that the organization takes. Well, but I mean, the three tenets still, that doesn't bother you, right? We enter with not knowing, we bear witness, and we take action, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
But if you skip over not knowing and try to fix things, there's a good chance it's going to be more of the same.
Okay, but at the very least, we know entering without not knowing is to put aside assumptions and open to what is.
Yes, and how do you do that?
Skandha practice.
Well, one answer, one answer, that's an old, it's a 2,500-year-old answer, but let's give it a try.
সাল তলে বেলা ডুবিলো দিদি লিলো লো সাল তলে বেলা ডুবিলো